So today, we're going to try and unlock what's known as the economic way of thinking. We're going to break down 10 core principles that honestly explain everything from your personal budget all the way up to the global economy. By the end of this, you're going to have a brand new toolkit to see the world just like an economist does. Let's dive in.
So, let me start by asking you a question. What does your family have in common with the entire U.S. economy? I know, it sounds like a weird comparison, right? But the answer to this question, well, it's the key to understanding all of economics.
Believe it or not, the word economy actually comes from the Greek word oikonomos, which literally means one who manages a household. And if you think about it, a society is a lot like a household. It has to make all these decisions about how to divvy up its resources. You know, who gets what, who does which jobs. It all comes down to managing things that are limited.
All right, so here's our game plan for building your new economic toolkit. First, we're going to look at the one single problem that drives every economic decision. Then we'll drill down to see how you make choices as an individual. After that, we'll zoom out to see how we all interact. And finally, we'll hit the big picture, how the whole economy works.
First up, economics is everywhere, and it really all boils down to one single fundamental problem that every single one of us faces every single day.
And that big fundamental problem? It's a concept called scarcity. To put it simply, we live in a world with limited resources, which means we just can't have everything we want. Time is scarce, money is scarce, even our attention is scarce. And because of scarcity, we're all forced to make choices. This one idea is the engine that gets all of economics going.
Okay, so if we're all forced to make choices, how do we actually do that? Let's get into the first set of principles which explain how you, as an individual, make decisions.
All right, principle number 1. People face trade-offs. You've probably heard the saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Well, that's basically it. To get something you like, you almost always have to give up something else you like. Every single decision is a trade-off.
Now, this doesn't just apply to you choosing what to eat for lunch. It applies to entire societies too. A classic societal trade-off is between efficiency and equality. Think of the economy as a big pie. Efficiency is all about making that pie as huge as possible. Equality, on the other hand, is about how we slice it up and share it. The tricky part is, a lot of policies that try to slice the pie more equally can sometimes end up shrinking the whole pie. It's a tough balancing act, and there's no easy answer.
So, facing all these trade-offs means every decision is about weighing costs against benefits. But the true cost of something isn't always what it seems. And that brings us right to principle number 2. The cost of something is what you give up to get it. Economists have a specific name for this: opportunity cost. It's not just the sticker price on something, it's whatever you had to give up to get it. Take going to college, for example. The cost isn't just tuition, room, and board. For most people, the biggest cost is actually the 4 years of salary they could have been earning if they'd worked instead. That's the opportunity cost. Okay, on to principle 3. This one's a little less obvious, but it's huge for understanding how we make decisions. Most choices in life are not these big, all-or-nothing decisions. You don't usually choose between never eating again or having a 10-course feast. No, you decide whether to have one more slice of pizza. That's what economists call thinking at the margin.
Here's a perfect modern-day example. You're binging a show. You've already paid for the streaming subscription. So what's the marginal or extra cost of watching just one more episode? Well, in dollars, it's $0. But the marginal cost in time is an hour you could have spent sleeping or working or doing literally anything else. We are constantly, almost subconsciously, weighing these tiny marginal costs and benefits.
And now for the last piece of the individual decision-making puzzle. And honestly, this one might be the most important of them all. People respond to incentives. An incentive is just anything that nudges you to act, whether it's the promise of a reward or the threat of a punishment. It's so central, in fact, that one famous economist joked that the entire field is just people respond to incentives. The rest is commentary.
But, and this is a huge but, incentives can have really weird, unintended consequences. Take seatbelt laws. On the surface, great idea, right? They make driving safer for the person in the car. But the law also created a new incentive. Drivers felt safer. So how do they respond? Well, a famous study back in 1975 found they started driving faster and a bit more recklessly. And the result was kind of shocking. The number of accidents actually went up. And while driver deaths stayed about the same, the number of pedestrian deaths increased. A classic case of unintended consequences.
All right, so we've covered how individuals make decisions. But of course, none of us live in a bubble.
Our choices affect other people. So now let's zoom out a bit and look at how we all interact with each other. We're moving from you to us.
And that leads us right into principle number 5. Trade can make everyone better off. You know, it's really easy to think of trade, especially between countries, as a zero-sum game where there's a winner and a loser. But in economics, that's just not how it works. When we specialize in what we do best and then trade with others, everybody can end up with more goods, more variety, and usually at a lower cost. This idea goes way back to one of the founding fathers of economics, Adam Smith. And here's his most famous insight. We get our dinner not because the butcher and the baker are nice people, but because they're looking out for their own self-interest. Back in the 1700s, this was a totally revolutionary way of looking at society.
And what's so incredible is that Smith's idea from the 18th century perfectly explains how a market works today, in the 21st century. Think about a ride-sharing app. The driver isn't coming to pick you up in the rain out of the goodness of her heart. She's doing it for the money. And you're not paying her to be nice. You're just trying to get home. But in the end, through pure self-interest, you both get exactly what you wanted.
And that whole interaction, that is the magic behind principle number 6. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. Smith had this amazing phrase for it. He called it the invisible hand. The idea is that when millions of people are all acting in their own self-interest, the market guides their decisions through prices as if by an invisible hand, often leading to a result that's good for society as a whole. It is one of the most powerful ideas in all of social science.
Okay, but that invisible hand, it's not perfect. And that brings us to principle number 7. Governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. For that invisible hand to even work, we need a government to enforce the rules. You know, property rights. A farmer's not going to grow food if she thinks it'll just get stolen. And sometimes, governments need to step in to fix what are called market failures, like when a factory pollutes the air, or to promote equality when the market leaves people behind.
Okay, time for our final zoom out. We've gone from the individual to how we interact. So what does all this tell us about the big picture? How does the entire economy as a whole work?
Well, principle number 8 tells a story that's both really simple and incredibly profound. A country's standard of living depends on its ability to produce goods and services. The massive differences in income you see on this chart, at the end of the day, they pretty much boil down to one single thing: productivity. When workers can produce more stuff per hour, the entire country gets richer. It's really that simple. All right, principle number 9 is all about prices. And I want you to just look at this number: 70 million. In post-World War I Germany, a newspaper that cost less than 1 mark in 1921 cost a mind-boggling 70 million marks just a couple of years later. That's called hyperinflation. So what on earth causes prices to spiral out of control like that? In almost every case of massive, sustained inflation, the culprit is the same: the government printing way too much money. When you have huge quantities of money chasing the same amount of goods and services, the value of that money just plummets. So it takes more and more of it to buy the exact same stuff.
And that leads us to our final principle. And this one, well, this one is probably the most debated of them all. Society faces a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. The key words there are short-run. In the short term, policies designed to fight inflation often cause a temporary rise in unemployment, and policies that try to boost employment can cause inflation to heat up. It's a constant, really difficult balancing act for policymakers all over the world.
So there you have it, the 10 principles of economics. Let's put this all together and just take one last look at the brand new economic toolkit you've got now.
You can see how they all connect, right? You've got the principles for how you make decisions, then how we all interact with each other, and finally, how the whole economy works as one big system. This is the foundation for understanding pretty much everything, from your own finances to global headlines about interest rates and trade wars.
So, you see, economics isn't just some dry subject with charts and graphs. It's really a powerful new way of seeing the world. And now you have the toolkit. So I'll just leave you with this one last question. Which of these principles are you going to spot out in the wild, in your own life, today?